Today I'm going to tell you a very, very touching, amazing, inspirational story. This is a story of a 15-year-old who was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. She became okay with all her treatment. It relapsed a couple of times after that too. And she fought it with a lot of grit and determination to overcome it. It's a compelling story, and I just wanted it out. I wanted to share with everyone to realize that it's always mind versus body. Welcome, Ashima. It's so good to have you in the Radiant Wellness Conclave.
Thank you so much for having me here.
So, Ashima, tell me something. When did you first develop the symptoms or realize that something was amiss?
I'll actually take you back to March of 2013. And I woke up one day to prepare for my exam, which was the next day. And I was literally just stretching, like you wake up and you want to stretch. And I felt a bump on the right side of my neck. And I thought that this was a little abnormal. I've never felt it before because, you're transitioning from peak winters to spring and then summer. And I did not know what to do. I think it was 7 in the morning, I immediately went and woke up my mom and my dad. And I told them that, there's something is amiss. It doesn't feel right. And so they started asking me questions that, does it hurt or not? Like, are you feeling anything? And I said, it's painless. And I think it wasn't a very good thing at that time because at least what I've been reading about, a painless lump is not something which is a good thing to have. And immediately I was taken to the hospital. I was in a very small place called Roorkee. It's near Dehradun. It's IIT Roorkee is very famous, so I think people might know because of that. And I was taken to the army hospital. My dad's in the army. And they took me to the ENT. And they started, doing little, checking. And they said, oh, does it hurt and all? And I just kept saying no. And they said, okay. So, and funny enough, they actually started diagnosing me for tuberculosis because apparently it has the same symptoms. And they started doing some TB gold tests and this and that and all my blood tests. And they said, okay, now you can go home. And the TB, actually, one of the tests came positive and one of the tests came negative. So we were a little shocked that, TB is, supposed to, as sad as it sounds, but it is, when you talk about TB, you only think about one, you belong to a certain community or this and that. And, as stereotypical Indian parents, they might just be like, oh, how did this happen? But anyway, so after that, the doctor there actually also put a doubt in my parents' mind. They said, it could also be cancer.
Beyond tuberculosis.
Something beyond tuberculosis. It could be malignant. And I was actually sent to Delhi after that for my further tests.
So Ashima, tell me something. How did you react? And when you were diagnosed that it's not tuberculosis, but it's Hodgkin's lymphoma, and that's cancer, I mean, was it something which no one is prepared for cancer. So, but then what was your coping mechanism? You were just like 15 years old.
So basically, I think after I kept moving from department to department, I was finally sent to the Department of Oncology. And they started doing my tests again and everything. And my biopsy report came. And so my parents, the doctor said, okay, he was reading the biopsy report, and my parents said, do you want her to go out of the room? So that only we can hear what the result is. And he's like, no, she's the patient, and, we actually want to talk to her because she'll be the one going through this. And my doctor didn't even say that, oh, you have cancer. He just said, no issues, from tomorrow we'll start your chemotherapy. And I was like, okay, and I think I was 15. I did not know what, these words even mean. And at that time, and I said, okay, so he said, okay, so we're going to admit you today so that, and from tomorrow your chemotherapy. And I was sent back home. And my mom went in, so I was living with my aunt at that time, and my mom told her something, and she started crying. And I was like, okay, I don't know what is happening. I really did not know what is happening. And I actually Googled the word chemotherapy, and I was like, okay, what is chemotherapy? And that's when I realized I had cancer. And that evening, I was shifted to the hospital. Next morning, chemotherapy. I don't think so I had any time to really absorb what was happening. When it really hit me that I had cancer was, I think, 1 month into my chemotherapies, when I woke up one fine morning and I saw a lot of hair in my hand. I think that's when it really struck me that I had cancer.
My God. So, being a topper, you've always been a topper, and I read your very compelling story where you said that you've always been great in academics. So, having diagnosed this with all the chemos, with the weakness, with a lot of symptoms in your body, how did you manage your studies?
So I was actually going into 10th when I was diagnosed. So for about almost 6-7 months, I was at home. I was not in any school. I was not enrolled because I was taken off. But I studied by myself. I had a tutor, so she would specially come and teach me and everything. I had a tutor for math. Except that all the other subjects, I pretty much studied on my own. I think I saw at that point studies as a distraction, because I was always very interested. It's not like something I was forced to do. I actually enjoyed studying. And so that's how I balanced even all throughout my 3 years when I was undergoing my treatment. I would have chemotherapy one day, and the next day I would be in school with my mask and my scarf, pretty much. And that's how I did even during my transplant, which I did undergo in class 12th. One month before my board exams, I underwent the transplant. I underwent my transplant, and I took my books to the room where they do the transplant, and I kept studying. I would literally have chemotherapy, the drip going in one hand, and I would be studying with my other, just flipping my books. I also wouldn't recommend this, only if you want to do. It's not compulsory to study. If you want to miss a year, miss a year. At this point in hindsight, I kind of think I could have done it, but I don't regret anything.
I think that was really brave of you. I mean, not many people would focus back on academics going through the whole thing. So you went through that, and then you got through your exams. Everything seemed to be going right, and then what happened? You relapsed after that?
I did. I was halfway through my 11th grade, and I think during my 6 monthly checkups, I had a PET scan, and they said that my cancer is back. And they started immediately, they started measuring, okay, what chemotherapy combination and what is and everything. They started writing down, and I was just but why again? I think that was the second time I cried in my life, and I was like, why me? And all the why questions started just coming in my mind, and but yeah, and I think I guess that's how life is. It has only made me stronger since then.
That's admirable. I mean, you had the shock of initially the diagnosis of cancer, then the pain of the treatment, you passed your exams, everything was going good, you had your relapse, you picked up the pieces, you got back, and you fought against it. And I think physically, emotionally, there must have been a great learning in that.
It was. When I was growing up, I was actually always known as among my cousins and my friends, as the kid who always cries. Anything, I would just start howling. And I think since the age of 15, when I was diagnosed, and I'm 25 now, in 10 years, I can literally count on my fingers the amount of times I've cried. And I think it's just made me emotionally stronger. Maybe it has also made me a little numb to a lot of things. And I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I would always take it in stride. And I think, and I've been there for my family, so I think you always need that one person who's very emotionally strong to keep the family together.
Yeah, that was my next question. You, as an individual, went through all this. You fought the pain, you fought the trauma, you were emotionally battling with your mind and your body. And I'm sure you must have seen a lot of hurt among your very, very close family, be it your parents or siblings. You must have seen their trauma, and you must have seen the way they were trying to act brave and try to look cheerful and, you know. I mean, when you see back hindsight, how do you feel about that? How much of credit would you give to your parents and your loved ones who kind of stood so stoically behind you?
I think all the credit does go to them. I did nothing. I had a very small part to play in this. They are actually what kept me motivated. And I remember when I was actually going through, and there were a couple of times that I really wanted to give up, and I was like, I can't take this, like chemotherapy. They're really painful, and I can't do it anymore. And I would literally just imagine that my funeral is going on, and the three most important people in my life, which is my mother, my brother, and my father, are just howling. And when that image would come in my mind, I was like, no way, I can't let them go through this. And I don't know if they know also about this or not, but, and so I know that, in front of me, they would be all smiley, cheery and all, but I think I told my mom day one of my chemotherapy, and when I saw a 6-month-old baby, undergoing chemo, and I told my mom, that, if this baby can go through that, even then we can go through, because I saw the mother of that 6-month-old baby, just, she was just looking at her child, and even she was not crying, she was so strong, and I told my mom that I want you to be her, like her, and since then, my family has always been there for me, and from my mother taking care of me during my transplant, she would wake up at 5 in the morning, clean the entire room. There were 3 rooms, and you basically anybody from the outside is not really allowed to come in, because the patient can because the immunity is so low, the patient can catch infection very easily. So she would sweep all the 3 rooms, she would mop all the 3 rooms, she would wake up before me and make sure that my bed was clean, and literally, take me to the washroom and everything. At the same time, my dad in the morning, so during transplant, you have to get your blood test done every day, so they can see, okay, how is the patient doing? And he would come at 5 in the morning, he would physically come. After the nurse would draw my blood, she would give the bottles, and he would take it to the lab, and then, sit for 1 hour till they would do the testing and come back. And so I think they've always, the sacrifices they made, every 2 weeks I was driven from Roorkee to Delhi for my chemotherapy sessions. And this literally went on for 3 years. I've always seen them just sitting with me when my chemotherapy is going on. Even they did not even say anything when I snapped at them, because all my emotions were all over the place. So I think I am here because of them.
And it's always said that, any kind of negative experiences in life, any kind of failure, any kind of difficulty, that when you fight that, and when you overcome that, you overcome your challenges, you just come up as a very strong person. And emotionally, physically, in every aspect, you come out very strong. And it's just because you had the determination and grit to fight this. You wanted it not only for yourself, but you saw the pain and the suffering, probably, if I could use that word, in your loved ones, for your loved ones. So I think, what would be the message for young people who, young or old, who have been recently diagnosed of cancer, and there is a lot of apprehension and uncertainty? So what would be your message to them?
I think the biggest, what I learned, I think before I was diagnosed with cancer, whenever you would hear the word, you would just be like, oh my God, you have cancer. They're always like, oh, you're going to die. And, because that's what is always, you only hear about that, oh, this person passed away because they had cancer. They succumbed to this and that. And cancer is curable. I think that's literally what I want to tell people. Just, I think, more about it being a physical issue. I think it's a mental issue. I think that's what your will and determination is how you're going to cure your problem. Chemotherapies, radiation, everything will keep going on, but I think it's more about your mental health and mental fitness, which will help you, overcome this disease. And don't let those people who show you, oh my God, you have cancer, like don't let those pity looks or anything get to you. I think just remain strong mentally and everything will be fine.
Absolutely, Ashima, you've been such an inspiration. You're little like a beacon to a lot of people, and the way you fought this, in spite of having the relapses, you still stayed strong. You're such a cheerful person, and you're really, really awesome. And I'm so happy to be in conversation with you. And I'm sure that your story is going to be heard by a lot of people. And it's not only a very inspirational story, but it's also a story of resilience, which I think the younger generation would be inspired with. Resilience, determination, grit, never give up spirit. And I think your mind is where your success, or you have overcome this because of your mind over your body. You've not let your body overcome you. So, my sincere gratitude and thanks that you've come all the way from Delhi to be with us today. And it's such an honor to be in conversation with you. Thank you so much, Ashima.
Thank you so much for having me here.